Life of an outlaw, the life we live ain't for everybody. In the city swimming with the dead bodies. A few life jackets can't save everybody. Running with young thugs that'll spray everybody. I need some guidance, the hood is my background. I'm from the city where they can't put the crack down. I'm feeling pity cause the semi put the smack down. I need some guidance, the walls closing in on me. I'm trying to find it, it seemed like it's running from me. Until I came across a book with no crookedness. It had a message addressing the wickedness. Life of an outlaw. Outlaw, outlaw, outlaw. The life we live ain't for everybody. I was 3 years old when my mother and father got murdered.
My father was African American. My mother was Puerto Rican and Cuban.
He bought homes for his mother. Businessman.
When my parents got killed, there's certain incidents that happened during the murder of my parents that I remember. My oldest brother, he remembered more than all of us.
Because I still remember that day. It's a clear memory in my head. I never forget that day. I was 4 years old. Muta, my brother, he was 3. And my youngest brother, Camille, he was 4 months. You know, yeah. First I seen my father get murdered while talking on the telephone, laying on the ground. He was on the phone, you know, he wasn't paying his friends or the guys that was so-called his friends, he wasn't paying on no mind. You know, he let them in, say, how you doing, you know. Once he let him in, you know, he just got back on the phone, laid on the floor. And when I seen the guy, you know, I ran up to one of the guys and jumped in his arms because I remember when I was small, the guy used to pick me up when he seen me, you know. And my brother, I believe my brother ran to the other guy and, you know, put his arms out like that for the guy to pick him up.
I remember one of the guys who entered to the house, he was actually my so-called godfather. I remember sitting on his lap, and I remember that he pushed me off this lap, and I remember that this was a violent push. Growing up, every time I think back about how he pushed me off, as a kid, it felt like it was violent.
You know, when he pushed me off, I just heard gunshots. And I'm a kid back then, so I'm just standing around. At first, I didn't know where it was coming from until I seen the guns. I seen my father, his chest was bleeding, and he was just laying on the ground. And I heard my mom scream. Once my mother started screaming, she, you know, she grabbed my brother. He was the first thing she saw, so she grabbed him and was running to, you know, we had a big house then, grabbed him and was running to the back room. And I remember one of the guys, you know, when she slammed the door, kicked the door into the back room. And my mother was, you know, couldn't go nowhere. Her back was against the wall, you know? And so he killed my mother while she's back against the wall.
After the murder of my parents, me and my brothers, we was in the house with the dead bodies for 24 hours. And I remember as a kid that I was biting my mother, trying to wake her up.
Laying there trying to wake our parents up, and they wouldn't wake up, and we just fell asleep. And the next morning, the guy my father was on the phone with, you know, he kept calling the house, it kept being busy. So he just came over there, and that's when he discovered us, you know.
I was heading to Salik's house. Yes, well, went out and took care of some business. And as I was at the door, his cousin was driving up. His cousin name was Hakeem. As we opened the door, Salik was laying there on the floor. It seemed like he had a bullet hole in his chest.
Approximately 8 a.m. that morning, I received a call from my niece saying my brother got shot.
As soon as he pushed his door, my brother was laying right there. Upon going to the bedroom, saw my brother's friend at the dining room table, slumped over.
And I found his white cord, he was on the floor. Now, as I checked the other bedroom on the first floor, his 3 children was there. One was laying on the bed crying, his youngest son. As I picked him up, his other 2 sons woke up. Amoni and Muta.
And the community was in an uproar because we was on edges. We was in hiding because we didn't know where were they, or were they coming back, or were they coming for us? We had no idea what the situation was.
The children at an early age, you know, a lot of Salik's friends coming to the house. They knew everybody came there, and so they were able to identify one of the shooters that killed their mother and father.
And all the time, it was my brother's so-called friends.
They were very close. I mean, they worked together. They went out together, went on trips together.
Hey, matter of fact, they came up all through the boys club, West Side. I mean, as far as 14, 15 years old. They came up together. These guys used to literally actually eat at my mother's table. My mother actually fed them. They have slept in my mother's home. And to see that, it was uncalled for, first of all. What it was behind, unknown. So.
Basically, my father, he was a diamond dealer. He used to sell diamonds. And at his age, at this time, my father was around 28 years old. He had a lot of money. He was owned a lot of properties within New Jersey. He was able to purchase houses with my grandmother, my grandfather. He was driving out pink Cadillacs Sevilles when they first came out. So he had a lot of attention and a flashy lifestyle, which this lifestyle sometimes brings envy, animosity, etc. So one of the guys who was very close to my father, who was actually one of the guys who, like we said back in the day, was my godfather. He happened to one day, he owed my father some money. And he decided to basically, instead of paying my father the money, he decided to pay some people a less amount of money to put a hit out on my mother and father.
So what happened, you had a driver outside and two shooters inside. And the other two was sitting back in the cut, waiting for the phone call when the hit was done. So it was all actuality was 5, but it was 3 that came to this house.
Everyone in the city and in the surrounding area was aware of the aftermath of the murder. Was there going to be a second killing? Was there going to be a return of these killers to come back to try and kill the children?
It was tense, the people, they was threatening that if they catch my brother, they're gonna kill him. They was trying to intimidate our family. I remember one incident, I was on the porch, me, my aunt, and a few other, my brothers and my cousins, we was on the porch, and some of the people that was affiliated with the people that killed my mother and father, they rolled up on a block of my grandmother's house. And when they got in front of a house, they tried to slow down, they tried to stare us, intimidate us. And I remember my aunt, she grabbed us and made us run in the house. She was afraid, so she said, come on, run in the house. And my brother Mooney, we never had a discussion about the death of my mother and father. We never spoke about it with each other. It's more hard for him because he remembered the most out of all of us. He even had to go to the courthouse and point everybody out.
One question. So you see anybody here who killed your parents? And he pointed. He said, that's who killed my mommy and dad. And they took him off the stand. That's that one question. He pointed. He said, that's who killed my mommy and dad.
The people that got convicted, they in prison. The main ones that have life in prison, I heard a few of them came home, but the one who was the main shooter and who got the most charges put against him, he got life in prison. So from after the death of my mother and father, me and my brothers, we went to move with my grandparents, the parents of my father. And this was a very packed household because my grandmother was one of them ladies that she don't say no to no one. So we had other relatives in the house, aunties, uncles, cousins. It was a very packed house, And she was a strong woman who basically, she was the foundation of our household at this time. My grandfather, he worked at nights, so he slept during the day. So the one who was in control of the house was actually my grandmother. She was the one that was taking care of us. She the one that was putting the rules down. She was basically the head of the household at this time. Man, she basically was the glue that kept my family together,
Growing up, since I can remember Moo, he was a normal child. He did okay in school when he felt like it.
We didn't take school serious. Soon as school was over, we hung on the block. We went to Chancellor Ave, which was our neighborhood, which was our block, and we just hung on the block, you know? My brothers and my cousins, they were selling drugs, and me and my younger cousins and younger brother, we would just be out there with the drug dealers. That's how we spent our days. I thought this was normal because since a very young age, that's all I seen. So I thought that this was the normal life, man, that you grow, you come up, this is a quick way to make some money. And it was only two sides. To me, the two sides of life was either you a crackhead or you a drug dealer, you know? And it was one of them things growing up, I used to have to say which side that I'm gonna be on. It's almost you gotta pick what side you wanna be on, you know what I mean? So we grew up, when you see the condition of the crackheads, you grew up in fear of crackheads, you know what I mean? You don't wanna be like a crackhead. Then you see the condition of people selling drugs, and that life, this is what you want for yourself. A few times I got involved with selling drugs. You know, I can recall one of the first times I ever sold drugs, I got arrested. I remember at a young age, I went to an older cat from my neighborhood, and I convinced him to let me get some drugs, and I convinced him that I'd be able to sell drugs for him. He gave me some drugs. I went outside on the block. First day that I tried to hustle and sell the drugs, the police rolled up on me. I remember I ran in the store and I threw the drugs into the refrigerator. Came out, I was arrogant because I thought I'd just outsmart the police. Pushed me against the wall, they checked me. Next thing I know, they pulled a crack vial out of my pocket. Called my grandmother, I got into some trouble. But from that day then, I said, man, I need to try to find another way to make it up out of the hood. I started to write poetry or write raps. And what inspired me is that I felt like I needed to express myself. I needed to figure a way to get what was inside of my chest, to release it up out of me, man, and that's when I turned to writing raps. My neighborhood was one of them neighborhoods, for a youngster, it was a lot to take in. So the way I was able to express myself was to go into my room, what I would see outside on my block, I would make a song out of it. Then I would go back outside and rap it for the drug dealers, and they would pay me money. And that's when I said, well, this is gonna be my hustle that I'm gonna stick with for the rest of my life.
So I lived down the street from Mu Top. So, you know, Mu, high school, we used to see him walking. He always had a notebook in his hand, rapping. I'm like, Mu, what you doing? He's like, yo, I'm rapping, man. I'm trying to make it happen. I'm rapping, you know. He'd show me his books. We're like, yo, spit a rhyme. We give him $1, $2, $5. He'd spit a rhyme for us. We'd come, then we got closer. I met his grandparents. His grandparents used to live here too, all his family. So we started hanging. Mu was like, you serious? We straight hustlers from the street. We need a better day, you know what I mean? We trying to find a better way. So we found Mu. We ran into Mu. Mu was like, yo, I really want to do this, man. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to make it happen. So we was like, all right, me and my man Shala B.
Muta knew what I was into, so that's when he said, yo, listen, I'm trying to rap. You know, let's go to the studio together. You know, we can do some rapping together, whatever, man. You could be the manager or something like that. And, you know, I'm trying to stop, you know, being in the streets. So I said, let me take my money and put it towards something, you know, that can keep me from one level to another. So
Corey, which is C, and Shala B, they got real involved. They got real involved with my career starting off as a musician, to the point that they was sending me in a recording studio. They was paying for my studio time. They was buying me clothes. They was taking care of me. You know what I mean? And they was the first ones that helped me pursue my career in the music industry.
And we started putting Mu in the studio. So Mu coming up with rhymes, you know. But every rhyme he wrote was like, it's about murder. Murder this. I remember the hook. Money got me feeling like a star, but murder got me feeling like my death ain't far. And they go, murder.
And this is, man, I was 13, 14 years old. So I was doing raps, man, that the people on the street was relating to, man. It was talking about drug dealing. At this time, New Jersey, especially Newark, they was known for stolen cars. It was stolen car capital of the world. So I was doing songs about people stealing cars and stuff like that, man.
Then his uncles gave us the story, then his grandparents gave us the story. We got cool with Miss Bill. And we was like, wow, you know, so we embraced him like a big brother. You know, his family, he had family, but you can tell in his eyes, his brother's eyes, like, damn, they missing their parents, like, you know, lonely. His grandparents was here for him, but it was like, he was still like lonely, you know what I mean? So he was like, his dream was to become a rapper.
He was just trying to do every avenue to try to get somewhere. You know what I'm saying? He really was with Corey. Corey was really being with him, running around with Queen Latifah, with Naughty by Nature. You know, they used to go to East Orange and be over there with them.
Queen Latifah, you know, she was a friend of my family. And I remember the first time that I heard on the radio and seen on television, it made me inspired. It made me feel like even more that I can make it, because she made it. Because she was a woman that we used to see walking in the hood with us. She used to come visit my grandmother, come visit my aunts. So when I actually seen her on television and heard on the radio, I used to tell myself, man, if she made it, she from the hood, I can make it.
So we're gonna make this happen. We're gonna do this. We're gonna make this happen. Studio here. We met these kids named Jamil.
We started working with him immediately, taking him to the studio, teaching him how to do 16-bar verses, because, Moo just was rapping. He'd just go on and on and on for like forever. He didn't know bars. So, we worked with him with songs and things like that. And, from then, once he started doing songs, he would, every time he would go home and write, he would just come back, call me up. I'd take him under my wing, take him around. Either Corey would drop him off in my house, and Moo would spend a day with me and my counterparts.
My whole life was based around music. I started to do performances at high school, block parties. I used to be on the block rapping with about 100 drug dealers around me. I'm in a circle rapping. I started to battle other rappers. I started to get a name for myself on the street. And one of the things that led up to me getting serious and getting professional in the music industry was a childhood friend of mine by the name of Yafeyo Gaddafi.
Here come Yak. Not knowing Yak and Moo actually grew up together but fell apart, as their parents or whatever moved from different areas.
His mother was good friends with a cousin, an older cousin of mine, like an auntie, older cousin of mine in my family. So when she came by at my relative's house at one time, she noticed that she had a son, and me and Gaddafi's birthday was about 2 days apart, so we was the same age. So she would pick me up, sometimes take me to his neighborhood, and I would hang out with him. But when years went past, I lost contact with Yafeyo, and I happened to run into his mother, and she told me he was actually trying to pursue a career in the music industry, and that his brother is Tupac Shakur.
Tupac Shakur. Boom. Right there. What, Pac? Yo, we see him in the news all the time. We'll be running around, he acting crazy, selling records, he doing it all.
Of course, at this time, Pac was known, especially in the hoods. He put a few records out. And she said, matter of fact, Gaddafi, Yafeyo, and Tupac is on their way to New York City. If you're serious about getting into the music industry, you should go up to him and talk to him yourself,
So me and Moo went to New York. Went to the hotel, Pac came down. After he took like an hour and a half, you know how the celebrities do. But, he still came down. We went in the room.
And, I walked in the hotel room. I remember seeing Gaddafi, Yafeyo. He looked like a whole nother person, tall, braids, you know what I mean? Had some finesse with him. The last time I seen him, he was a short, chubby kid, but big for his height, whatever. I remember Pac walked in the room, man. He was, in the back of my mind, I used to say, I have to impress this dude. I had to let him know that I'm from the hood, I'm from the streets or whatever.
So we gave Pac the demo. So Pac listening, he was like, yeah, all right, that's cool. Wow, that's what's up, man.
But when I started to talk to him, man, he let me know from the jump that he not into that type of conversation. And he started to question me about the death of my mother and father.
So Moo gave Pac the story. He sat down on the bed in the hotel, literally sat down, he listening. So he was like, yeah, well, 15, 16 years old, I'm trying to do this, Pac, and, our parents got killed. So Pac looked. He gave this awkward look, like, ooh. So he was like, go ahead with the story. So Pac kept looking, listening to the story. After he finished the story, on everything I love, one tear came down Pac's eye. One tear came down Pac's eye. He just looked, put his head down like this. He looked up. He was like, I got you, Moo.
So for me, I was surprised to see that someone reacted over the story of the death of my mother and father the way he did, to the point that I was trying to tell him, like, no need to cry, you know what I mean? And he was a real dude. He said, man, I'm going to try my best to help you, and ever since that, from that day and from that meeting, every time that they came back to New York City, they would call me and I would go over there and meet with them, For a while at the beginning, when Pac kept coming around, I actually wasn't able to really speak too much about rap with him. He knew that I was a rapper. I gave him my CD or whatever like that. But at the same time, I kept saying, when we going to have the conversation about me trying to get in the music industry? But I guess he was trying to fill me out. At the beginning, it was more of me coming around and just hanging around with him. You know what I mean? He wasn't really bringing up the topic. And eventually, he invited me to the studio.
Pac called Moo. Yo, listen, I'm doing Me Against the World. Want to come over? So we all came over.
And he was working on a song, and that's when the first time that I got on a record with him.
So I had left, dropped Moo off, Mook called me all excited. Yo, I'm on the album, man. Word up, he put me on the album. He's like, come back over, pick me up. We on the album. So we back in the studio, we listening. He was like, yo, we look bumping our head like, yo, I'm at the end. That's it. That's it right there. We in. Pac like, y'all in. I'm gonna take care of y'all. We all around rolling with Pac in New York.
This particular time in my life, I got kicked out of high school. You know, we had a new principal that came in, and she called me to her office, and she said that I asked for the names of the top 100 worst kids in the school, and your name was at the top 10 of the list. And she said, if you mess up one more time, I'm gonna kick you out. So I didn't take her serious, you know what I mean? I messed up. She called me back to the office. She kicked me out. And what I really wanted to do is pursue that career in the music industry. I tasted it when I was hanging around Pac, and I got back in touch with Gaddafi. I felt like I was already living that life. So what happened is Gaddafi and Castro at this time, I was calling down to Atlanta, and they was like, why don't you come down here? They just basically gave me the invitation to come down there. I went back to Corey at this time, C, and he said, if you want to go, man, I'll pay for your plane ticket, you know? So he got up the money, gave me the money, paying for my plane ticket. And I remember going to Atlanta, and that was the beginning of the outlaw era.
When Mook came around, it was like, you know, I remember him from when we were little. And, you know, it was like, how could you not get along with him? You know what I mean? He was cool. He was like one of us. He was funny. We thought we was wild. He was a lot wilder than we was, though.
That's right. Crazy.
I remember Moo was like off the hook. Moo was basically the wildest outlaw in the group, the wildest.
We was all going to hang out downtown, and he wasn't even young. He wasn't even old enough to get into the club. So we left him at the hotel downtown on Peachtree. So when we come back from the, from hanging out, Pac was like, is that Muta? He walking up and down the street, that's bothering people.
He was just a young kid, very talented, but wild.
Napoleon was the type of guy that was so wild that you kind of had to keep your hand on him because he was just, always wanting to fight. He was always the catch. You always had to say, where's he at? Because somebody, he'd be liable to punch somebody.
This time I still was a solo artist. When I met Pac and even got back with Yafeo, Gaddafi, and the rest of the brothers, man, I still had the intention. I always wanted to be a solo artist.
As soon as he got on the scene, we was already rapping. We was already a group. We was Dramacidal or the Young Thugs or something like that. And when he came, he had 2 songs. He had Money Had Me Feeling Like a Star, Money and Murder, and another song.
But we ended up doing a song together called Killing Fields. Me, Gaddafi, Edie, and Castro. At this time, the name of their group was called the Young Thugs. Pac went back to New York City, and he happened to call down to Atlanta, and we played the song for him over the phone for Pac. And he thought that we belong as a group. You know what I mean? He said we sound good together, so that's when he started to put me in the group, the Young Thugs.
And he added an extra grit to it and a lot more soul to what we was doing. You know what I'm saying? So he was like I said, he was a piece that was missing.
I guess at this time we just hit a lucky beat, man, a dope beat, and we came up with a dope song. And Pac said, that's what I wanted. That's what I was trying to get out of y'all. We went on to be called Dramacidal. And from that song on and a few other songs, he said that I'm gonna get y'all a record deal with Interscope Records. He sent a few songs with him, and they agreed, and that's the first contract that we ever signed was with Interscope Records. Pac happened to one day leave Atlanta to go to New York City, and we get the phone call in the middle of the night from his girlfriend, Keisha, and she spoke to Set, which is Pac's sister, saying Pac just got shot. It felt like even growing up that every time I got close to an individual, even in my neighborhood, something happened to him, you know what I mean? So I started to thinking like, now I'm close with this individual and he was treating me like a little brother, something gonna happen to him. Soon word got back that he was okay. The next day, after he checked himself out of the hospital, he called the house. He spoke to Edie, Gaddafi said, let everybody know he was okay. And then he asked to speak to me. He told them to give me the phone. And when I got on the phone with him, I was excited to speak to him, but I was more happy that he was safe. And he was saying, his exact words was, "You didn't think that I'd let them take me away from you so soon." Most people from the outside looking in, and the way the media portrayed it, they thought it was a robbery. But them people came to murder him. Word was on the street that people like Biggie and Puffy, they knew that this individual was going to try to do this to him, because the same individual who tried to put this hit out on Pac, the word on the street is that they was extorting Puffy and Biggie and all these type of cats. So the information started to get back to us real quick. A few weeks after that, he actually got arrested. But while he got arrested, he kept doing what he said he was going to do. We went to Interscope Records. We signed a contract with Interscope Records while he was in prison. So it was just me, Castro, and Edie. Went to Universal Studios, stayed in the suburbs. Interscope would pick us up, take us to the studio, and we did an album. Pac would call in from prison. He got on a few songs. Actually, he was the first artist to be involved in a song from prison. He was on hooks. We put the microphone to the speaker, the phone to the speaker, and he started spitting a hook. You know what I mean? So that album was dope, man. It was some of the best music we ever done. They promoted us. Interscope Records had us in all the magazines. I remember one day we visited him. He said, "I'm not going to release that album on Interscope." He said, "Matter of fact, I'm signing a record deal with Suge Knight." This time, Death Row Records was the #1 record label. They had Snoop Dogg, they had Dr. Dre. They knew how to promote their artists, put it that way. And Death Row Record was different for me because it was you be in a studio and it's full of Bloods and Crips. You got Snoop in the studio full of Crips. Snoop Dogg would be in this studio. We in this studio full of Bloods hanging with Suge Knight. It was always seemed like it was a tense atmosphere. You know what I mean? It was one of them things that it was a situation you had to always be on point. It reminded me of the streets. The studio actually reminded me of the streets in Jersey. After getting shot and doing 1.5 years in prison and coming out dropping the #1 record, the people was losing their mind. You walk in the mall with him. It was just one of them things that he was the #1 celebrity, and he was the biggest star at that time. Now he went from selling 3 to 4 or 5 million records to selling 20 million records. Pac said that, "I want to give you guys names something different than most of all the other rap groups out there." At this time, a lot of people were changing their names towards Italian mob figures or Italian names. So Pac said, "I want to give you guys names of so-called enemies of the West or so-called tyrants." And when I was young, I used to have a very bad temper. When I met Pac, I still had this chip on my shoulder. And he said that I basically had the short man complex. It was an inside joke. So that's how he gave me the name Napoleon, after the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte.
He had the Napoleon complex. He was short. You know what I mean? He was little. So it was only right that his name was Napoleon.
Napoleon, his name fitted him well. He had a short man's complex. He'd try anybody.
Napoleon is the short dude. You know what I mean? Had a Napoleon complex. You know what I mean? He was a rider. He was a rider for the squad. You know what I mean?
So that's how we formed the Outlaws. At first it was Outlaw Immortals, and then he just cut it to the Outlaws. The fame was on another level because for the first time in my life, I did a tour. Tupac, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre, and the Dog Pound, we did a small tour around America. And to be able to come on stage with Pac and to look out in a football stadium and nothing but people in the crowd and we rapping on the side of them, man, that was the first time that I knew that this was real. To see people out in the audience screaming, as far as the eye can see, people is crowded. You know what I mean? That was fame, man. At that time of my life, I just felt, when I left New Jersey, I was a kid, When I started to get around Pac, I started to become a man. It just made me arrogant, you know what I mean? It made me arrogant because you basically have the whole world at your feet.
At the time, that music was, it was really hitting. Tupac had introduced the Outlaws to his fans.
There was a certain amount of arrogance they all had during that time because they were on cloud nine. I mean, they were on the top. They were selling millions of albums with Tupac, and I think it felt for them that they had arrived to that point that they were all hoping to get to in their lives.
So Death Row Records, man, we was living like kings. I got a phone call from my Aunt Jamila saying that my grandmother's unconscious. My grandmother was named Mary Clark. West Virginia. She come from down south, so she had an old school upbringing. And she was just a sweet woman. One of the reasons I wanted to make it in the music industry so I can get her up out of the hood, I can put her in a better living condition, buy a house. This is the dream that I wanted to do for my grandmother.
Because after my parents got murdered, my grandmother was the next close thing to me. And growing up, I always was close and stay underneath my grandmother because I was so used, things are getting taken away from me.
I can admit, man, we were some bad kids. We drove her crazy. But she had this way where she dealt with us that all of us had a certain relationship with her, a special relationship with us.
And I growing up, when I was a child, I never knew how I would take if my grandmother passed away.
And I remember as kids, every time she go in the hospital, me and my brothers and cousins say, man, I swear to God, if grandma died, we killing everybody in the neighborhood. We were just, this is how much we loved her. So when I got up there, by the time I got off the plane, she died already. When she passed away, man, I think that was the hardest death I ever went through. When you lose your mother and father at 3 years old, you're not really attached to them, you know what I mean? I was just a kid. But it was hard for me when I lost my grandmother. And that's when Gaddafi was in my corner, because I remember I get the phone call, and I remember I just grabbed a gun, and I had so much anger in me that I literally wanted to hurt somebody. And I ended up staying in New Jersey for a while, I ended up start to run back in the streets, hanging, start to get used to my old ways. I had a little fame with me at this time, so I didn't even almost wanted to go back to LA because I was on albums already. I had a name for myself, so I was taking advantage of that. And probably like a month or something went past, and I get a phone call from Pac, and he said, "Are you ready to come home?" Even though I wasn't ready, but I knew basically what that means is to get back out here, you know what I mean? Went back to LA and I started to listen to the songs on Machiavelli. And to me, man, that was the most different music he ever done. It seemed like on that album, he touched in his inside and basically put it on the music that I never heard that from him in my life, After he came to Death Row Records, he was more aggressive, but you gotta understand that he had actually people that wanted to murder him. The people that came to shoot him in that elevator that day in the studio, they came with the intention to murder him, you know what I mean? And the word on the street is that these same people still wanted to murder him. One, I think the media really blew it up and made it an East Coast, West Coast, because all the outlaws, we was from the East Coast.
Me, I didn't really see it as no East Coast, West Coast thing. Even though in reality it kind of was, because it was a problem for people from the West Coast to go to the East Coast and vice versa. But I was from New York and California.
It was more of a beef between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records. It was more on a personal beef.
And the whole incident popped off with Tupac, and it's like I kind of seen Biggie struggling with that, like on a personal note, because it kind of explained the relationship that he had with Tupac was genuine and they was pretty cool.
The Hit 'Em Up song came that Pac was in the studio. He did one Hit 'Em Up that all of us was on. And then he came, I think Biggie and him put out a song called Get Money, something like that. And Pac said, man, I'm going to take their beat, switch it up a little, and I'm about to diss them, you know what I mean?
So when they just try to go on this full court onslaught about, assassinating big character, and I really didn't feel them cats, to be honest with you.
In hip hop, you got beef records, but what Pac did with that record was he made it very personal, and he made it to where, you had to do something. You couldn't just rap no more. You had to either do something or don't say nothing.
It's one of them things that when it came out, it blew up, because I don't think that nobody ever did a diss that was that serious, you know what I mean? It was serious.
I was like, man, these dudes is troublemakers, man. You know what I mean? These cats are starting a little bit too much trouble. And this thing ain't going to end, on a good note if this persists.
When I got to Los Angeles, he happened to be doing the last song, which is called Life of an Outlaw. And that was basically the last song that I ever done with him. That was it, Tupac, he got into a fight with an individual for some incident that happened a few weeks before that. One of the guys from Death Row Records whispered to Pac and said, that's the dude that I got into a fight with a few weeks ago, whatever. Pac, for whatever reason, just snapped, man, and charged the dude, start fighting the dude.
You know, so Pac left me and Napoleon at the house, because we had just came from New York, took Edie and Castro with him. You know what I mean? So me and Napoleon, we was the only two outlaws, you know, not in Vegas, you know what I mean?
This particular time I left out of Pac house, you know, and he called the house and he asked Noble where I was at, and Noble said he left. But something was very strange, man, because even for me at that time, I remember I felt like something was gonna happen, you know? Even when I look back at it, I ask myself, what was that feeling? You know, I just had this feeling that I said, I feel something's gonna happen. And that's one of the reasons I left Pac house, you know? I just felt like I need to go think. When I got back to the house, I remember young Noble coming to the gate, and his face he had a strange look on his face. And I said, did Pac call? He said, yo, I think Yasmin called Gaddafi's mother and said, Tupac just got shot. But the first thing that I said in my head, well, he got shot 5 times before, he's gonna take this, come out, do records, sell millions of records again. We put all types of guns in the trunk. We drove to Vegas, man. We had a truck full of weapons because we didn't know what to expect when we get there. I remember when I first entered the hospital to see Pac in the bed, his mother and Setua, his sister, used to always say that he's okay, he looked fine. But when I actually saw him in a hospital bed, to me, I knew for right there that it didn't look like he was gonna make it. Of course, his mother and his sister are very strong individuals, so they kept saying he looked good, he looked good. But when I seen Tupac in the state that he was in, it was hard for me to see him like that. Pac was a guy that was always loud, always partying. So now to see him lying in the bed, he was helpless. It just didn't look right, you know what I mean? And a couple days later, that's when he passed away.
Pac loved him, and them two was bonding, so I know it affected him real hard. And if you know Moo, he's a real, you know, sensitive, passionate person, so, you know, he felt it hard.
Once Pac got killed, you know, I think he probably lost a little hope, you know, because, you know, everything, I guess, that was close to him always, you know, somehow, some way he dies or get taken away from him.
His grandmother just passed. Everybody that was taking care of him as far as trying to have guardianship over him passed away.
From day one, he treated me like a family member. It wasn't like he said, come to Atlanta, you stay at the hotel. I actually moved in the house with him.
Pac was his mentor. Pac was his older brother. He was his dad even in a lot of ways.
I mean, like Pac was my family. That was my brother, you know. It's obvious how I felt. I felt devastated. I felt destroyed. A part of me was taken from me, you know what I'm saying?
Well, when I heard he passed away, I was in Jersey and off some bullshit, probably drunk or high. And when I heard this, I heard it on the radio. I was kind of hurt because I couldn't be there, but at the same time, I felt like the nigga was gonna pull it through, and he didn't.
Word on the street that it was Orlando Anderson. This is the guy that Pac fought in the hotel lobby. Word on the street that it was his boys that came back to take revenge, which makes sense, you know what I mean? Because especially in America, that's how it works, you know what I mean? You fight with an individual nowadays, they come back for revenge. They don't want to come back to fight. They're gonna come back to shoot, you know what I mean? So word on the streets, even though they never found the killer, but that was the word on the streets, that the people that was involved was from that guy hood, from Compton, you know what I mean?
When you in the public eye like that, you just can't go around wilding out, smacking niggas in the head. And it was a lesson really learned to me, because I come from areas where if you do something to somebody, you gotta be ready for when they come back. And the bottom line is I just learned to just be humble.
So after the death of Pac, me and Gaddafi, we went back to New Jersey. I actually went back to New Jersey when my hood was basically beefing with some cats from another neighborhood. And they actually was coming around on my block looking for my cousin Roddy. And I happened to one day be outside on the block with my brother Siki, and a van pulled up and they jumped out, shotgun, and they ran down on us. And they was looking at us, and they happened to find out that my cousin Roddy wasn't there. So they basically jumped in their van and they went around the corner. The next day, I went back out the block, the same thing. They came back around looking for my cousin Roddy. That they were jumping out with the guns, just pointing guns at everybody. So if I'm coming from just losing Pac, you know what I mean, from getting shot up, I wasn't taking that lightly. So one day they actually came back on the block, and I said, man, it's either me or them. What if they come out this time and start shooting? And I ran upstairs to an apartment where they used to hide the drugs, and hide the guns. And my cousin actually grabbed the gun, and my cousin Reef, and I actually started wrestling the gun, getting the gun from out of his hand. And I ran downstairs, and when I came outside of the building, the van was actually out there. You know what I mean? They was about to jump out, put it that way. A few days later after that, I got arrested for something different, for some weed or something. I was around somebody that had some marijuana with them, and I got locked up. And when I was in the cell, it was only for a week or two. You know, when I was in the cell, I was thinking, man, and I basically said, man, this is the reason I left New Jersey. What am I doing? You know, I wanted to pursue a career in the music industry. What am I doing back to square one, you know? So I said, when I get out of here, I'm going to tell Gaddafi, let's leave, man. Let's go pursue our career in the music industry. So I got out and I told Gaddafi, man, let's just get up out of here. He said, you go and I'll meet you out there. I introduced Gaddafi to my cousin Roddy, and they built their own relationship, man. They became friends, and they started to hang around each other without me. And I introduced Gaddafi to Roddy, basically saying also that Gaddafi was in good hands. I know that if anything would happen to him while he was around Roddy, I know Roddy the type that ain't gonna let nothing happen to him, put it that way. So when I left New Jersey in October, I get a phone call in November. And I remember Castro coming in the room, he said, man, Gaddafi just got shot.
And we found out about Yak on the morning of the Pac Memorial. That morning is when we found out about Yak. So it was like, you know.
A few hours later, we got another phone call that came from New Jersey and said, and it was Muhtar's cousin. It was Roddy. And I remember I just broke down and started crying.
The feeling after we found out who shot Yak was sickness. You know, we were shocked and we were sickened. It was like we were dealing with so much already.
I believe Gaddafi death affected my brother probably harder than Pac death, you know, because it came from the hands of my little cousin. And, you know, growing up, my grandmother raised me, my two brothers, and three of my other cousins. So we grew up as brothers all our life.
Yak was his best friend. You know, as far as I knew, that's how I met him. You know, that's how I met him, through Yak. And I know that had to hurt.
It just left it just left everybody in a weird position because his cousin did it. You know what I'm saying? He introduced them to each other.
Dealing with it through the clique, dealing with it on the family level. You know, there was arguments, people fought, people stopped speaking, and people argue.
One end, you know, you got Gaddafi family feeling a certain way about my family now because my cousin killed, you know, their family member. And my brother stuck in the middle because, you know, he loved Gaddafi like a brother, and he also loved my cousin like as a brother.
But Pac Mom's, one of the things I can say, even though Gaddafi was a nephew and it was my cousin that actually killed him, you know what I mean? They never once made me feel uncomfortable in that house. But deep in my own soul, I felt uncomfortable, you know what I mean? Even though they treated me like family, they stood up for me.
He's stuck in the middle, but, you know, my brothers, it was kind of hard because he really, you know, he didn't want to take no sides, but what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, you know? But after he talked to my cousin said he didn't mean to do it.
And I went to him and I asked him what happened. You know, he was looking, he had this look on his face that he was looking like he was hurt and sad. He looked like he was in shame, put it that way. And he was explaining to me, you know, he said I was playing with a gun. You know, Kaz was the other guy involved. He said that he put Yak in a headlock. I pointed the gun in his face and the gun accidentally went off. So we ran. And I was like, man, if it's an accident, you should turn yourself in. And the reason why I felt like he should turn himself in because, one, I didn't really feel comfortable with my cousin Roddy
actually killing Gaddafi, who was a close friend of mine, just walking around like that. You know what I mean? I felt like something should be done. You know what I mean? But of course, Roddy is my cousin, and I love my cousin, so I don't want nothing bad to happen to him. So I just figured, man, you should turn yourself in and face responsibility. You know what I mean? If it's an accident, you have to, because I looked at it, if he would have ran, then it would have looked like it wasn't an accident. You know, eventually he turned himself in, and he did about 10 to 12 years in prison for that.
My brother understood him. I guess he forgave him, man. But his family didn't forgive him, but that's understanding, you know? If somebody killed my family member, if they said I was high on drugs, I'm sorry. I probably had a hard time forgiving them too, so I understand that, you know? But my brother forgave my cousin, but it still was difficult for him.
It felt like, man, I couldn't believe that. One, I lost my grandmother, then Tupac, and then Gaddafi, man. I couldn't believe it, you know what I mean? And after that, I just started to we started to give up, you know what I mean? Because you're losing everybody around you. What do you do? The only thing that I wanted to do after that is get high and drunk. Every single day of my life after that, I made sure that I was numb. After the death of Gaddafi and the death of Tupac, I get a phone call one day, and I think this all was in the same year, man. This is what made it even hard. I get a phone call from my aunt, and she said, somebody just jumped your brother. Salik, he was named after my father. We knew him growing up, but I can't recall when he came in our life. We was close with him. We spent a lot of time with him. He used to come visit us on the weekends, so we was close. The way his face and his head, it was swollen as if somebody jumped him. So when they went to the hospital, the doctor at the hospital, he looked at him and it said it looked like as if he got jumped with pipes, like somebody beat him with pipes and bat, not knowing all this time that he had a bullet in his head. Come to find out that he shot himself in the head. I do remember that some people in my family, they used to refer to him as their stepbrother. And I remember at a young age when they used to say, this is your stepbrother, this is your stepbrother. In actuality, this is actually my father's son, so he's my brother. There's some times that, you know, we felt like some of the family members ain't really, you know, we ain't opened up to him like we should have, put it that way. I think my brother Siki, he was hurting the inside because he felt like he didn't fit in like the rest of us.
Siki affected Moo a lot, you know what I'm saying? He was already, you know, a heavy drinker, a real intense dude, for lack of a better word, and I think that just added to it. It added to all of us, but not as much as Moo, because we all love Siki too, you know what I'm saying? Siki was a good guy, and we had a lot of love for him, so it's never good when you lose somebody close to you. It's never a good thing.
Basically, I felt like I was losing my mind. I almost lost my mind. I turned to drugs. I started experimenting with different drugs. I was getting drunk every single day. To the point that I won't never walk out of my house without being drunk. It was a time in my life, a 5-year period, that every single day for 5 years I was intoxicated. And this is how I wanted to live my life.
Every day at 6:30, he would get a bottle of Hennessy and some Coke, and he would drink every day nonstop. And walked around with a gun. I always wanted to fight, always wanted to start trouble, always look for trouble.
You know, he started getting heavy in the liquor, trying anybody. He had a death wish, you know what I mean? He'd go up on anybody, smack them.
Every other day I was going to nightclubs just to start fights. I just had so much anger in me at that time, you know what I mean? I didn't want to live, or I didn't really care. I just gave up on life. We was back in Los Angeles at this time. We signed a small contract with Death Row Records.
And my brother and them, you know, they needed to make some money. They had to take care of their family, had to take care of themselves, they had bills. So the only people that came to him was Suge. So there on out, it didn't work out.
We wanted to make music, you know, even though it was hard without Gaddafi and without Pac actually being in the same studio that we used to record with Pac and Gaddafi. So we went into the recording studio, you know, this is what we knew. We started our own company called Outlaw Records. And we started to make our own money independent because we'd put a record out that sell about 200,000 or 300,000 copies, and we was getting about $10 a CD, you know, so $10 of every copy was going to us. So we was making a little bit of money. So we did a small tour, you know, we went to Germany, different places around the world. As far as success for my personal life, I remember I had homes, you know what I mean? I had my own house. I thought that this was the American dream. I remember bought a house in a gated community, all $1 million houses. I'm probably the youngest homeowner in that estate, only African American in that estate. It was a gated community, and I just felt like I made it, you know what I mean? But one of the things that was missing was happiness. And I used to think that happiness, well, maybe I was in this house too long, and I went and bought another house, and I went and bought another house. At this particular time in my life, I had a townhouse And I had 2 other houses. I had 3 houses, but I was very depressed.
I saw him struggle, you know. I saw him just, you know, he was heavy in alcohol. He was, you know, and I feel him. And, you know, if you know Moo's history, you know, about his family and his parents being killed. And, you know, I was like, man, this dude is dealing with so much. You know, so I seen him wild out with the girls, wild out drinking alcohol, getting drunk, fighting.
In the studio, I remember he was always always liquored up. He was always liquored up and smoking weed. So he was always a little belligerent and a little more physically active than the rest of the Outlaws.
So once he started drinking, you know, I guess it numb away his pain and make him forget about reality, and he live in that moment. So it become addictive, you know? And every day he would drink. And for me, I used to always tell him, like, man, you need to stop drinking, man. He wasn't like someone that's drinking every day, spitting up. You know, he can drink and you'll never know he was drunk. That's probably how much he was immune to it.
At that time of my life, man, I was going through something serious because in the inside of me, I wanted happiness, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I was giving up on life. That night in the studio, when I got into a fight with my little brother, man, I was drunk out of my mind. And I got into an argument with him, and he said something I didn't like, so immediately I just started fighting. Going off, I always talk back, you know what I mean? He would say something, I always got something to say, you know what I mean? Disrespectful, and we just started fighting. When I had him on the ground, man, I basically was hitting his head against the ground to the point that he started to bleed. Me and Moo saying I was bleeding, I had to get stitches in my head because I hit my head on the window, it had bars. And it happened to be a Muslim brother who was in the studio with us at that time, but he was in another session.
Walked into the studio, there's blood everywhere. I mean, you know, tables are turned over, chairs are everywhere. Recording equipment is laid out everywhere.
So he, after hearing the commotion and seeing the fight or whatever, he came outside and he calmed me down and he started to speak to me.
After what happened, I asked him if there was his brother's blood on the floor. And he said, what? I said, is that your brother's blood on the floor? And he said, yeah. I said, that's your mother's blood and your father's blood also. I said, can I ask you something? And he said, yes. I said, imagine tomorrow waking up sober and realizing that you killed your brother. How would you feel about that? And tears started coming from his eyes. And I knew that was checkmate. I knew that was a turning point for him.
And he kind of basically, I remember he kept in touch with me and always asked me to come to the masjid, and for a while I was ignoring him. And when I first went up there, I remember I went up there deep, about 20 or 30 boys with me. And I went in there expecting that it's just gonna be like how I rode everywhere else with a posse, a crew, and we just gonna hang out. But when I went there, that's when I seen something different that basically inclined me towards to want to know more about what these people was upon.
And, so more and more he wanted to know more about where my inner peace was coming from.
He started explaining to me a little about the religion of Islam, and prayer time came. And he said, you should pray with us. I said, nah, come on, man. I felt a little hesitant. He's like, nah, come pray with me, get up. I said, man, I don't know how to pray. I don't pray. You know what I mean? What should I say? He said, just go with the emotions and you can ask God for anything. Whatever you want to talk to God with, you can talk to God. So I remember, while I'm in the line with him, everything he doing, I'm actually looking at the side. If he put his hands right here, I'll do it. And I was just going with the motions with him, you know what I mean? And when I put my face down to the floor, I actually started praying, you know what I mean? I remember for the first time in my life, I felt peace, you know what I mean? Because this actually was the first time that I remember putting my face on the floor praying to God. That same night when I went home, I actually started reading the Quran. You know, this is a book, I always heard of the Quran. I knew that this was a book that the Muslims read. I just never really paid too much attention to it. I never really thought about it as being something serious, you know what I mean? But that day I said, let me read. You know, I started to pay attention to the words in that book, and I said, wow, it's as if it's talking to me. And I said, there's no way on earth a man could come up with these words. And I was around people like Pac. Like I said before, Pac, he was a genius when it comes to writing raps. And I'm talking about it's not too many rappers that can come to the level of Pac when it comes to writing, even poetry. My parents, as far as I know, my mother and father, they was part of the Nation of Islam. When I found out that the people that killed my mother and father was from the Nation of Islam, I actually thought that they was Muslims. So I grew up having like a hatred towards Muslims or a hatred towards Islam because I thought that these were the people that killed my mother and father.
Parents were Muslims, and Muslims killed his parents. So he couldn't stand no Muslim.
I said, let me go watch the Malcolm X movie again. And when I watched it, to be honest, this was the first time that I watched it sober. And I really paid attention to the movie. And that's when I really, even though I always knew that he left the Nation of Islam, but he actually exposed them to let them know that this is not Islam. The Nation of Islam and the religion of Islam, two different religions.
After the death of Malcolm X and Malcolm X going to Saudi Arabia and exposing the Nation of Islam, and my father and mother, they left the Nation of Islam and they became Orthodox Sunni Muslims.
When I seen the Malcolm X movie again, and at the same time I was reading literature of the Quran and things like that, it let me know that I shouldn't hate a whole group of people for what somebody did to my mother and father that actually didn't even belong to that religion.
Right after that, I remember saying, man, I need to go to Hajj. That place where Malcolm X went to in Mecca, it changed his life. I need to change my life. So I accepted the religion of Islam, and a few months later, alhamdulillah, I went to Hajj. It was something that you felt that was different that I never felt before, to see people from all walks of life, from all different races, from all different, so many different countries. I never witnessed nothing like that in my life, to see people that you don't even know, but they're calling you brother, and they invite you to come eat with them. It was almost too good to be true. I didn't believe that people actually exist on this earth that just with this brotherhood. I didn't believe that it existed.
He went over there, and when he came back, you know, he had this story about it that was amazing. And he was definitely a changed brother.
When I returned back to America, man, I remember everything was looking different to me. In fact, because this was actually the first time in my life I spent 2 weeks without my cell phone, 2 weeks without talking business, 2 weeks in the middle of a desert just contemplating and praying to God. So when I came back, of course, naturally I didn't want to be around the stuff that I left. I didn't want to, the Outlaws was on tour. I couldn't see myself on stage at that time, rapping around cuss words. I couldn't see myself going back to what I was trying to run away from. So that's when I called the Outlaws up and I said, to be honest, I'm not going to meet y'all on tour. And that was the last time I ever toured with the Outlaws. I ever been in a group with them. I just started trying to get my life together. I came back as a whole nother person, man. I looked at life different after that. Prior to Islam, man, I was very aggressive, very angry. And it wasn't nothing for me to take my anger out on an individual and hurt someone. It was the first time in my life that I even read about something that gave the rights to a woman and put a woman on in such a high status. Coming from the music industry, I never looked at a woman in that way in my life. And for the first time in my life, I actually would think about before I do an action or before I try to hurt someone. Eventually, I walked away from the music industry, but at the same time, I felt like something was still missing. I just felt like it wasn't for me to walk away from the music industry and actually just sit in my living room or sit in my room and that's it. I felt like I still needed to put that message out or still had a voice that I wanted to speak to the youth. And that's when I decided to get into motivational speaking. Assalamu alaikum. That's when I lost contact with Yafeyo. And I happened to run into his mother. And when I asked how he was doing, she said that Yafeyo was trying to pursue a career in the music industry. And she said that in fact, he has a brother by the name of Tupac Shakur. Because I felt like one of the reasons I actually got into the music industry because I had a voice, I had something that I wanted to speak. Well, you don't have to be caught up in that lifestyle thinking that this is the only way that's going to bring happiness to you. You know, so I felt like I had to come back to the kids and let them know that there's a better way.
I think that it's great that Napoleon is a motivational speaker because he's speaking from a real point of view.
But when I looked at him, he definitely inspired me to want to, give back to the youth and give back to the community.
No matter what you're going through in life, you can change because he's living proof of it.
He's a strong brother and he's making a big impact on a lot of people, Muslim and non-Muslim. And personally, I'm striving to be more like him.
He's a motivational speaker now. He's all over the world. So he's trying. I think he's really, it can be a good thing.
Because the dude did a straight 180 and turned his whole life around. And I seen it can work. I seen it can happen. You could definitely do it.
Overall, man, my brother, he's a different person now, man. He helping people now.
I basically gave up on life, and I used to say, man, if me living and breathing on earth and it's this painful to me, there is no need for me to live anymore. And I actually used to just want to give up on life. But after accepting the religion of Islam, it basically gave me a whole new meaning of life. So for the first time in my life, I had some hope for something positive.